mic and see the intro.
Sisters, and here we say, hey, hey,
cheers. Welcome everybody to episode 3 of the Smoke Show with Dark Guy and Drury on the FHN network. We're streaming to you live, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. You can basically find us anywhere. I'm Jason Maslico, better known as Dark Guy. My co-host Ryan Drury. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. We took a little week off there to kind of gather ourselves a little bit. We both had a lot going on, and now we're back on the airwaves, fired up to be back, buddy.
Yeah, well, part of that was me supposed to have my nice professional mic set up, and, well, there's one piece.
There it is.
There's another piece.
Oh, my God.
Let's just say it was an unsuccessful venture today.
Amazing, man. If only you lived around the corner, I could have set all that up for you, no problem.
Well, I don't know. I should be able to figure it out. I needed to jerry rig something up here. I'm not at a regular table in true Dark Guy fashion. I'm actually at an air hockey table. I sit at an air hockey table when I'm doing this, so it didn't quite line up the way it would have on a normal table. So
yeah.
Next week there will be a mic in front of Dark Guy.
Love it. That'll be great, man. I didn't know you were on an air hockey table, and I don't know how many of our listeners and viewers did either. Do you just I think it would be a great idea to just have like a scotch on the rocks on a coaster and just float it around the air hockey table, and every now and again when it bounces back to you, sneak a quick step.
Turn the air on. It could my beard could be blowing in.
Yes, dude. Yeah, we get some blue and white glitter and kind of get the Leafs colors going when we ever play hockey again, if that ever happens.
Oh, who knows with all the new restrictions coming in with Toronto going into another lockdown for
people aren't getting the message, I guess, and I don't know, everybody's got a lot of different opinions about the virus and everything. I don't know. I've pretty much just been in my apartment where you see me here for 9 months, and that's been real fun. It's crazy, man. You're in Barrie though. What is the situation there? Is it?
So we've just been deemed, I think, into the yellow zone or orange zone, whatever.
Yeah.
We just got moved up again into another zone, but I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on it. You can find opinions on the COVID anywhere, but I don't understand, the idea behind a lockdown for simply Toronto or Peel. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, all you're going to do is force people who don't get the message, who, the anti-maskers or the people who think this isn't real. All they're going to start doing is traveling 25 minutes to North York. They're going to start traveling 40 minutes to Barrie, Aurora, and you're just going to spread it more and more. If you're going to put a lockdown in, put it in for all of Ontario and get her done. It doesn't make sense to go by region or by cases because people are just going to travel and carry it with them. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough situation. We probably should have just done what Australia did. And I know Australia is very different and they're literally isolated in the middle of the ocean. We should have just went full scale, batten the hatches lockdown for 2 or 3 weeks in April and seen where we were then. Cause they have no cases there. It's crazy. Right. And you're strict travel and you do this, you do that. But we kind of went about it in a wishy-washy way. And, here we are now. And I don't know if we're going to see any hockey, certainly junior hockey anyway. We'll see.
Yeah, I know you were talking, we were talking a little bit earlier today, and you said you had got a release from the junior B ranks from the Goj. Up until this weekend, we still had a game on Sunday as exhibition game against Lindsay Muskies out in Collingwood. On our end, there seems to be a little discrepancy between what's going to be allowed in the red zones and the orange zones, and one faction is saying we could play if we're in an orange zone, that it has to be red and you can't play anymore. Somebody on the other side is saying, nope, you can't play in the orange, you can't play in the red. So we'll figure it out. It's not looking too promising, unfortunately. Like you said, I'm not too sure. I didn't see what the Goats released today. What are they doing in Junior B?
So basically with Junior B and essentially the same thing in Junior C, basically what both those leagues had done was, we didn't really hear a lot from the junior leagues up until about September. That was including, the CHL as well, right? So we all know that the Q has been playing, but that hasn't gone very well.
No.
Basically the plan then in the fall was we're going to wait until around November, late October, and decide whether or not the situation's good enough where we could potentially play in late October, early November. Obviously that didn't happen. So then they rejigged it and they put out a big release in, I believe, October, saying December 2nd is our prime start date. It's ideally when we'd like to start. Now, just today, on November 23rd, the GOJHL put out an official release through their commissioner, Mark Tuck, basically saying that now we're going to push it back to January 15th, and they're going to play a modified 5-on-5. And there's still no clear picture on whether there will be fans. I mean, it'll all be up to local public health officials, right? Yeah. But basically what they're going to do is the idea is January 15th, they'll play a short season that will end in late March and have the Sutherland Cup handed out no later than the first weekend of June, I believe is what they want. So their idea basically is, in terms of COVID, is basically there'll be little brackets within the 3 GOJHL divisions. You'll play one opponent over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, 5 or 6 times, then isolate and then play another opponent in your division. Same thing. So you're probably going to play only 3 or 4 teams. That'll get you into a playoff round. They need permission. I clarified this both with Junior C and Junior B. I would assume it's the same with you guys in Junior A and the OJHL. You need permission from each public health officer in a different region to be able to have a team come and play. So if Collingwood goes, to Lindsay or whatever, and you're in a different county or municipality, both public health officials need to okay it. So that's a whole bit of red tape as well. And then just digging into their modified rules, we heard a lot. We talked about this on our first episode with Biz Nasty. Go back and listen to that. It's on all the best podcast apps, including Spotify. We were talking about this with them and basically saying, is it going to be worth it for them to play like 3-on-3? And I think all of us were on the same page, no. And I don't really like what they've put out in this release either. They'll play 5-on-5, no body checking at all. It'll be a penalty. No intentional physical contact. I don't really know what that means. I guess no corner scrums.
Yeah, that's
no post whistle scrums either. It'll be a penalty if you're in a post whistle scrum gathering around in front of the goalie. But then with live play, how does that work? Like, can guys fight for rebounds? How does a loose puck in the corner work? I don't understand it. It's again wishy-washy. It's like with all of the restrictions all over the country. It's some places are doing this, some places are doing this, and like some sport, like we're seeing with the NFL, guys are slamming into each other for 2.5 hours, and the experts down there are saying you're prone to the virus more from long exposure periods to someone who has it. So that's why you'll see guys, NFL teams shutting down facilities and everything because, guys are sitting in a film room together for 2 hours watching film, or they're on the treadmill or whatever, right? Whereas in a game, you have some physical contact for a brief period of seconds, you split off, and that's why there aren't a lot of guys testing positive as a result of games played. It's more their teammates getting each other infected, right? So if that's the case, and you're gonna allow guys to get on a bus together, you're gonna allow them to potentially travel together, you're gonna sit on a bench together, and so you're gonna be able to do all that. And we know that in Junior B and C, it's mandatory you have to wear a full face shield. And now they're they're going to get a bunch of those Bauer mouthpieces to cover their mouths and everything. So if you're going to have double face shields and you're going to let guys get on buses together and sit on benches, like, what's the difference if I run you over in the corner? It's a 0.1 0.1 millisecond piece of body contact. I don't understand. I know everybody wants to play, and it would be great to be able to play in some fashion. Me personally, I just don't think it's worthwhile. I still don't believe we're going to see any local junior hockey like in a competitive sense at all. I just don't see how it's feasible.
Well, I'll tell you, Ryan, first of all, you would never run me over in a corner, but
well,
I got
pretty
what
big
you were
guy.
saying. I got what you're saying. Second of all, we've been experiencing everything what you've been saying so far with Collingwood. We've had to do the exact same thing. Both our, the Collingwood health officials, Lindsay health officials, had to agree to both sides of it. We had the ability to have a little bit more of a presence in the arena than Lindsay did, but that's very simple. So in order for this to happen, when our team was traveling to Lindsay, we had an X amount of people that were allowed to travel there, and that was it. Nobody, I would have loved to have gone to Lindsay to watch a game or two as well. However, given the fact that their health standards didn't allow for that, well, then that's what you have to do to play the games. Now, it's worked under this model, that from what I've seen, and knock on wood, we've played 5 games. No players that I know of have had anything merely even closely resembling a symptom. And when it's done, they're going to have to go into an isolation, same thing as you were describing, and everybody's going to have to go through the whole protocols. And when it's all safe to go again, we might look at, providing we're still able to, look at going into maybe another one of these exhibition series in December. Now, it's changed the game a little bit. Like you said, that there's no body contact. The refs have been pretty good so far in distinguishing what is incidental contact. Two guys for a puck and you brush into the guy. Well, that's not a penalty. There was no intent to be physical. It was just, hey, two guys are reaching for the puck. Yeah, happen to bump into each other. And I think there is a way to do it. But I feel the same as you. I just, as long as the numbers keep climbing, restrictions keep getting put in place, I don't see how it's going to happen. And that'll be unfortunate for so many different reasons. A lot of these players, they're working on a dream here. They've dedicated their life to reaching a goal, and you might be taking away one of their lost opportunities in junior hockey because of it. A lot of owners have put their nose to the grindstone and put a lot of money into bringing junior hockey to these small communities where it's so beloved. And what are they going to do for a whole calendar season with no income? It's just it's scary to think about what the end result could be of a full season of no junior C, junior B, junior A hockey.
Well, yeah, it is. And it's unfortunate. And yeah, I think everybody is on edge and nervous. I just, at this point, it's getting so deep into what would normally be, coming up on the halfway point of the regular season in our junior leagues that we were involved in. And I just feel like we're never really going to get to a point until there's a vaccine widely distributed that fans are going to be allowed en masse into buildings enough that there's even going to be a profit scene. I actually am of the opinion that it's probably, unfortunately, just going to be cheaper to just not have a season.
Yeah.
The operational costs alone and the travel, all that stuff, it costs these owners money. And many ownership groups, like in junior B and C, especially the Listowel Cyclones that, are around the corner from me right now practicing, they're community owned. They've got 10 or 11 different people involved in ownership, and like it's a lot of money to run a junior hockey team at that level. And I just don't think that it's going to be feasible without a single person or even 50 people in the arena. It's just not going to be feasible, and it sucks. Like, we talked about it with Biz and Kipper a little bit as well. Like, it sucks for guys that are going to lose a year or more because remember, the season got cut off in March. It sucks. It's not fun, but there are a lot of aspects of our lives that just aren't operating normally. I had like 6 or 7 concerts that I had tickets for this year. Couldn't go. It's a sad fact of life, and I just don't know if I'm wrestling a lot with, should they play with these wonky rules, or should they just fold up shop and hope by June, July that there's a vaccine. All the leaders are talking. They've got these vaccines that are 95% effective and everything. They could be rolling out in early 2021. So I guess I'm more on the train of cross our fingers and hope by like July, August, tons of people have taken the vaccine. It's working and the numbers are plummeting.
Are you going to be one of the guys that goes, or would you line up to be one of the first ones for the vaccine? Or are you waiting for a few people to see if there's any side effects?
Well, it's tough, right? Because, I take the flu vaccine every year. I mean, if scientists are saying that they've trialed enough people and that they're saying it's 95% effective and they can guarantee that there's not going to be weird adverse, effects from it. I will take it. I will take it to, get life somewhat back to normal. I'd do anything to do that. I don't want to be one of the lab trial people. And like they're getting paid for it and everything.
You end up growing a blue beard or something.
Yeah, that'd be weird, wouldn't it? No, but if they, because they're, it's law, like they have to do clinical trials with a certain number of people, then they enhance the number of people and give people like a double dose, see what that does. I'm not a scientist, man. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, you know what I mean? But like they test this stuff, and if they do it and they come out and a ton of people can verify, like we tested 10,000 people and it's killing the virus, thumbs up, get me in line. Let's go.
Well, we kind of segued into one of my next things I wanted to talk about when we were talking about the financials of the junior situation. You're looking at the NHL right now, and you look at the list of remaining unrestricted free agents. There are some names on that list that, in any other climate would have been long gone. Somebody like a Mike Hoffman, Duclair, Athanasiou, even twilight of his career, but somebody's got to have a use for Corey Perry.
For sure. I'm pretty sure Eric Holla is still unsigned too. Is he not?
Yeah, Holla.
He's a pretty good player.
Sammy Vatanen, Hamonic.
They're pretty quality hockey players.
You're thinking that the uncertainty of potential income for the NHL as well is factoring into the delay in some of these guys getting signed, or some people maybe just kind of trying to be a little too particular on where they land. What do you what's your make of this? What's your read on it?
So definitely that. I think it's kind of two situations. It would depend on the team, right? Like a team, say like the Leafs or Montreal or Boston, that is maybe specifically a team more like Montreal that has a good chunk of cap room, are probably sitting there with still plenty of money, more so than say an Arizona or a Carolina or something like that, and are sitting there and going, the cap is going to be flat. Is there a guy here that I want to give a long-term deal to, or even a 2 to 3 year deal, knowing that the cap's not going to go up any further and I'm going to have young guys that I have to pay later on as well. So that's probably a factor in it for sure. And then, of course, for some owners that just, aren't in markets that are yielding hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year, like a Montreal, a Toronto, and New York Rangers. There are probably a lot of ownership groups that are sitting there with cap room going, gee, I don't really know if I can invest $3 or $4 million in a Sammy Vatanen, or 5, 6, maybe 7 million for a guy like Mike Hoffman. I don't know if I have the kind of loose cheddar hanging around to do something like that, because I've already lost 25, 30 million dollars off the end of the year. God knows what playoff losses were like. I mean, especially for the teams that went deep, like, Tampa Bay, and who knows how much money they potentially lost that they normally would have been garnering with pure playoff gate, because remember, the players' salaries are done being paid on the final day of the regular season. So everything that comes in on playoffs, merch, all of it is just pure gate. And it's huge for owners, right? And to not have that and basically just be living off of TV sponsors and merchandise sales. I mean, I don't know how many people were online spending $200 on reverse retro jerseys, but so yeah, that has to be a factor. Sitting there going, gee, do I have $2 or $3 million to give Eric Hall? Do I have $5, $6 million to give Mike Hoffman? I don't know if many owners feel comfortable that they do right now.
Yeah, for me, I look at the talent level, the scoring potential. There's so many teams that need some depth scoring, and you've got a guy like Mike Hoffman sitting there for months now without a contract, and it's like, I get times are tough, but you need to improve your hockey team one way or another. I mean, make a move.
He'll get signed. Like he's a for sure, like he will be signed. And I think he'll be one of the first guys that gets signed whenever the NHL and Players Association, they're working as we speak right now, when they fully iron out a return to play plan. We know they want to start January 1st. The owners have kind of come back and said, we want to do another escalated 16% escrow spread out, and the players are kind of going, I don't know. They already agreed to a weird like 20% system over 3.
I think you're being polite with that there, because
they're not happy.
The feeling and the temperature I've gotten is not this isn't cool. They screwed us. They set us up, and they're screwing us again. Not good for long term. Negotiations. They just signed their extension, and now it's like the NHL's coming back to them. They haven't even, entered into it here yet, and the NHL's already coming back wanting to make amendments. The players are not happy at all.
No, they're not happy, but I mean, at the end of the day, and it's unfortunate. Like, yeah, I feel bad. You sign a contract, you expect to get a large chunk of that contract, and yeah, to lose that money, sucks. But no one really saw this pandemic, pardon me, coming in. Like, listen, I'm never on the side of the owners and Gary Bettman. I'm always pro player. I think that these guys sacrifice a lot. I know some people out there are like, oh, but they make a bajillion dollars. Some of them do, but they sacrifice an awful lot to entertain people that like the sport. Whether you're a hockey fan or not, it doesn't matter. There are a lot of people who are, and these guys sacrifice their body, their time with their families to do this stuff, and to lose out on that money is tough. And I'm never, a proponent of the owners or anything like that, but it's just the reality we're living in. We're going to have to make concessions on both sides, whether it's an additional 16%. I bet you it falls somewhere more around 12 or 13. Regardless, they're playing. Like if they're able to actually do it and do a Canadian division or however they set it up, like they're playing. Like they cannot afford to not play at all.
The only thing I would say, and like you said, I'm in the same boat. Obviously, 99.9% percent of the time, I 100% side with the players. The only thing I would say on this topic and some of the noise in the background I've heard recently about the players not being happy is, did you really not see it coming? Like the owners were going to try to recoup some of their losses one way or another. And right now, the only way they can do that is through the player salary. So, I mean, the writing had to be on the wall there. Somebody in the NHLPA had to be smart enough to say, hey, guys, just be prepared because they're going to want some money back, and the only way they can get it is from us. So I don't, if they were caught off guard, they shouldn't have been. And if they saw it coming, maybe they shouldn't be making it as bad as they are in some cases. But I get it. I mean, yeah, I signed a contract. I want my money too. I don't want somebody coming back and saying, hey, times are tough. Let's renegotiate.
And I think too, off the back of that, right, and I've seen it twice now with my team, I think that a lot of superstar players, like really, really high-end players, you're going to see more and more guys going the way of negotiating their own deals and not paying an agent to do it. Ovechkin's been doing it essentially his entire career.
Yeah.
He and his mom negotiated that monster $112 million contract, $122 million contract, whatever it was. He was worth every penny, and he's going to renegotiate his next deal. And Nick Backstrom, his buddy, it's his birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Nick. He just renegotiated his own deal without an agent. I think you're going to see guys like Austin Matthews, McDavid when his deal is up. Guys like that are the really big heavy hitters. I think you're going to see more and more guys do that to save themselves money because of the landscape that we're in. And I bet you too, a lot of guys will hold teams hostage a little bit and go, you know what? I only want to sign for 2 years and you're going to give me close to max money rather than spread it out over a 7 or 8 year deal where you make 12 or 13. No, how about you give me a 2-year deal at 30 million? And I want,
like we were talking about in baseball, Trevor Bauer right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Like he's going to get
he's going on one year deals, trying to cash in year after year.
For sure.
Give me that 1 year deal, and let's see where I end up next year.
And he'll, in his situation, Trevor Bauer in Major League Baseball, coming off a Cy Young, like he's gonna. Teams are gonna just have to. Oh well, they just got to sign a blank piece of paper. What do you want? 35 million? Yep, probably. And he's probably worth it. He's never hurt. And hockey players are going to do the same. I think you'll see guys maybe that, you know, when Matthews' deal is up, maybe he goes to the Leafs and says, you know what, I'll take a 2-year extension. You can give me 28 or 29 million. I'll make 14 and a half a season. And of that 28 and a half, let's say I want 22 of it paid up front. That's what guys are going to start doing. I wouldn't be surprised. Right. And
No.
Some teams are just going to have to bow to that and pay out massive sums of money. Like the Leafs aren't going to shed a tear over that. They could afford to do that. But some teams in other markets, like, you know, if Sebastian Aho turns around and does that to Carolina, like is Tom Dundon going to pony up $20 million in front-loaded cash? I don't think so. He fired their broadcast crew. He's going to give Sebastian Aho $20 million. Come on, Tommy.
I'll have to talk to David Ayers, see what kind of what kind of bonus he got out of Carolina.
No kidding.
Before we go too far, I know we do have a great guest coming on. He's your co-host on NWO Sports. He's got 30 years in the industry. Chris Clark. I do want to touch real quick before he hops on here. Kendall Coyne.
Yes, Kendall Coyne Schofield, big hire for the Blackhawks.
Absolutely. Hired as the director of player development. Absolutely massive step in the right direction for hockey on whole. So great to see that happening for Kendall. It's about time, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. Following in the footsteps of, maybe the Leafs bringing in Haley Wickenheiser a few years back. I don't know. Congratulations. That's all I got to say.
No, it's great for the sport. It's going to open a lot of doors, which it should have done years ago. Women belong in sports. I just think that that's a general statement that should just be accepted, and they deserve positions that men have held, and they deserve to be in the conversation for positions like this. And I mean, you look back a couple years, she blew everybody away at the skills competition that year, where she was unbelievably fast and the fastest skater. I mean, Connor McDavid was blown away even. I mean, it's incredible. And she's one of the best American hockey players ever. And she even said in her interview doing press that, Cami Granato, Ray Ferraro's wife, it was a huge inspiration to her. Easily the greatest, some would argue the greatest female hockey player ever, certainly the greatest American female hockey player ever. And she's one of
American.
Yeah, for sure. And she's one of the, if I'm not mistaken, one of the scouting directors for the Vegas Golden Knights. So, Cami Granato continuing to lay groundwork for people like Kendall Coyne-Schofield, and I'm excited to see what the next generation of women in hockey are able to do off the back of an announcement like this.
Absolutely. Well, with no further ado, Ryan, I'm going to hand you the introduction here. Clarkie's waiting to come in, so have at her.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are very excited right now to welcome in my good friend and host on MWO Sports, a man who has tons of experience in the broadcasting industry. He worked for your beloved Maple Leafs for a long, long time. He worked at Fan 590. He was Bob McCown's producer. I mean, this guy's done it all. Chris Clark is on with us. Clarkie, what's up, buddy? Clarkie's mic is muted. Incredible.
30 years in the business, he can't unmute his mic.
I love it. He doesn't have his mic unmuted. No, we can't hear you, buddy. Such a great intro, and all of a sudden, Clarkie is NA. We can see him. He looks great. He's gonna figure it out, man.
Clarkie's hey!
Can we hear him? We still don't have his audio. Clarkie has jumbled his microphone. Probably one of the funniest intro bits I've ever heard. I give him this great endorsement.
30 years in the sports media business.
Yeah, he's just a great sports media guy. Mic doesn't work. Fantastic.
He's even got the Leafs TV shirt rocking there too.
Oh, I knew he was going to have that on too. He should. He was one of the original guys there. Clarkie's like, come on, keep going, keep talking about me. Clarkie actually was one of the original guys there at Leafs TV with John Shannon. We'll try and hook back up with Clarkie here. I bet he just has to go into his preferences. But he was one of the original guys there, and for a long time, one of his main jobs at MLSE was online content creation. He was one of the original guys on one of the original teams, the Maple Leafs, that were kind of at the forefront in the NHL of doing online content. And of course, Clarkie could tell you famous story. If anybody's read Steve Dangle's book, he'll be a guest on this show at some point too. He helped launch his career. I mean, the guy's done a little bit of everything. Like, he worked with Bob McCown. I mean, what do you want, right? Is Clarkie ever going to figure this microphone out? I don't know. No, we can't hear you, brother. This is a full-scale Clarkie mic meltdown.
Well, it's not a meltdown until we see the mic go flying across the room. But
well, yeah, Clarkie's not really the.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Oh my goodness!
Hey, but here's the deal. Okay, this is not my fault.
I
don't know what's happening. We do this every week, Drury. Like there's something wrong here. Like, I'm hearing myself through my headphones, and I'm hearing you guys through my speakers on my computer. Is it?
Oh, it's your sound preferences, buddy, for sure.
Is this one working?
Absolutely.
So that's how you're hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, well, at least two of us have mics.
And you're loud and clear, which is great. Now, I've done enough, polishing off your resume in front of everybody. First of all, how are you, buddy? You look great.
Thank you very much. I'm like, it's such a bad way to start a show. You guys having to fill. Like, I was listening to, I was out for just a little country drive today, and I was listening to your show with Kiprios, and the same thing happened at the beginning. You guys were like, "Oh, there's Nick. He looks like he's starting to set up and all this stuff." And
so
just the way you wait for this to happen. I don't know.
Here's the thing with Kipper there. I don't think that he realized that when he clicked the link that he was live. Yeah. Like, And
Oh.
so he was still setting his stuff up.
Yeah. I know.
Without
Okay, now I just
realizing-
fixed everything. I'm hearing you guys in my ears now. It's
There
all
you
good.
go. I love it.
I
brother.
am a
There you go.
techie. I
This-
do know how to do this.
Yes, this guy is a
You know?
professional. I promise. Now,
Like
listen,
I sat many years beside Tom and Jerry and Joe Bowen and Bill Waters. I was like the guy twirling the dials. I know what I'm doing when it comes to that stuff.
I know you do. You're the producer extraordinaire. Now, like, tell us a little bit about that, because obviously, like I mentioned, long time at MLSE, Leafs TV. You were director of online content there. I talked a bit about Steve Dangle and your relationship with him.
Woo!
But going way back, like you worked with Bob McCowan for a long time too. I mean, the guy's a legend. Like, where did you start though? Like, out of college, what was your first gig? Like, what were you?
My first gig was working for Telemedia Broadcasting, just operating the ball games in the studio. So, Tom Cheek and Jerry Howarth and Joe Bowen, they would call me an engineer. I wasn't an engineer. I was just the operator in the studio. Basically, I would play the music, count them down out of breaks, play all the network commercials. So back then it was separated, right? Network and local. It still is, but it's done a little differently now. But back then, all I had to hit was the network spots. So we had carts, piles and piles of carts. I still have nightmares about the carts because if you're not organized, you're screwed. You really are. If you're not organized in there and have all your carts ready to go, it can get really hectic when you have to play the commercials. But so that's where I started. And then like, it wasn't long after that, I graduated, I guess you could say, to being on site. So being on site at Maple Leaf Gardens, and actually I trained at Exhibition Stadium. Funny thing is, the very first game that I was supposed to do by myself was one of Dave Siebes' 8 2/3 innings of no-hit ball. And Jerry Brown of the Cleveland Indians broke it up 8 2/3, 1 out away. That was one of my first games. And I remember Tom went to throw to the play of the game after the game, like we always do, and it was my job. So how we did that was we had cassettes back then. And anytime something happened in the game, we would take the cassette out and write out what the play was. So you had like 15 cassettes at the end of the game with all potential play of the games. So of course we knew what the play of the game was, and that's when it was Jerry Brown's hit. So I'm pretty sure that was his name, Jerry Brown. It was a long time ago. But I have the cassette ready, and there was a little trick with the cassette, talking about today with having to figure out how to get the input and outputs right. If you had to cue up the cassette by headphones, and there was a little button on the front of the Tascam cassette deck saying rear output or front output. So front output was the headphones. So I have it all ready to go. Tom's, well, let's go back to the top of the ninth, and there's no doubt what the play of the game was in this one. Let's listen. Boom. And he throws to me, and I press the cassette, and it's rolling, and I see the needles moving on the VU meter, and nothing. I don't hear any audio, and I'm like, oh no. Then I realize, it's that button. I push the button, and all you hear Tom say is, and that'll break up the no-hitter. Like, oh no.
That's awesome.
So Tom threw to break instead of saying, let's try that again. He just threw to break, and he turns around and goes, well, Clark, it can only get better from here. So that's a true story.
But that's great though, because he could have like freaked out and whatever. Beautiful.
There's Gilmore.
There's Gilmore the cat, and it's a girl, dark guy.
It is, but it's named Gilmore. Yep.
I guess we can let that slide.
We can let it slide. Yeah. He could have freaked out at you, but I mean, at least he was kind of, almost sarcastically encouraging, because some people aren't like that in this business, Clarky.
No, for sure. He wasn't happy about it. Neither was I. And it was a mistake I never made again. And that's the key, right? You learn and you don't do it again. So that was quite something to do that. And then, and then I made my way down to Maple Leaf Gardens and worked right beside my idol, Joe Bowen, and at the time, Bill Waters. So it was a neat experience to start off my career for sure. And that was back, I guess, the late 80s, 87, 88. Yep.
Clarky, now I have a couple potential, I think I know what your potential answer is going to be, but thinking back at your time with MLSE and working with Bowen, and what would you say would be perhaps your biggest moment that of a broadcast you were involved in?
Wow. Do you remember when Mike Gartner's stick flew over the glass at Maple Leaf Gardens and a fan handed it back to him? And he went down, I think, and scored a goal. I was there for that game. Most of the games that I remember were bad games. Like I remember the Leafs playing the Blues in the playoffs, and Alan Bester in net, and Sergio Momesso scores a goal from outside the blue line in overtime to win. I mean, I remember those things. With Joe, some exciting moments. A lot of them involved beating the Ottawa Senators in the playoffs as things progressed. I think Corey Cross scored a goal late in overtime once for the Leafs and against the Sens in the playoffs.
Well, we did that often, Clarky. So I mean, if you don't remember specific games, there's a lot to choose from of the Leafs beating Ottawa in the playoffs.
That's right. They've never lost to them in the playoffs, and we remind all the Sens fans every time they bring anything up about that. But and some of the banter between Joe and Bill, and then Joe and Gord Stellick. Then I worked with Ken Daniels and Gord Stellick. A lot of guys made their way through the booth at the time. But one of the funnier stories is and I'm sure I've told this story before to Ryan, but Bill Waters was an agent at the time. He was working as a color analyst for the Jays. Can you imagine that nowadays? Anyway, he had a private booth, a box at the end of the Gardens, and his bartender's name was Jimmy. Well, they had a code word for Jimmy. And every time they would say on the air, hey, it's time for an out-of-town scoreboard. Well, not only did that mean, okay, let's get the scoreboard, that meant Jimmy had to bring them their rum and cokes. And that happened, 2 or 3 times a game where they would say, it's time for an out-of-town scoreboard. We'll get to that in a minute. There comes Jimmy down the press box. So that was fun. Guys, I also had a chance to sit with Jimmy Holmstrom, the organist for the Leafs, in his perch at Maple Leaf Gardens, and he wanted me to come down and be a spotter for him. So basically, you would, if there was a goal that maybe he didn't see, like just helping him out throughout the game. Well, the guys beside me were the NHL officials in the video booth. And Brian Lewis was in there a lot, and I know Brian really well now. But some of the guys who would go down and pound on that door. Did George McPhee work for the Canucks? He did, right? As an assistant GM?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was George McPhee who one day he was pounding on that door as hard as possible. Just was not happy with a call on the ice, and he was pounding the door. They never let him in. And then you talk to them afterwards and they just laugh. They go, yeah, you can pound as much as they want. I'm not letting them in. Right. So, so that was neat as well. And some of the other, like, I don't even know, Drury, like I was the voice of the Toronto Marlies for a year.
That's right.
Doing the PA announcing down at Rico. And 2 things I remember about that. One says I forgot. It's not that I forgot. It was a little scrambly, the organization at best of times. So I guess I did forget to introduce Justin Pogge at the beginning of the season. All the guys were coming on the ice, and I was introducing them one at a time, and everything was great. And I forgot to introduce Justin Pogge, and he just sort of put his head down and crawled onto the ice. I didn't even know I forgot until Bob McGill said it to me at the end of the first period. But the other thing is, it was a fighter for the Leafs. Oh, man, I'll remember his name. Just give me a minute. But the banter in the penalty box, because that's where I was sitting, right in the penalty box, right between the 2 guys in the penalty box. And the banter that would go on and the chirping that would go on down there was worth the price of admission. It was awesome to hear that stuff. Just being in a penalty box in a professional atmosphere was great.
Yeah, every once in a while, it's great when those uncensored mic outtakes from the players being wired up. When those hit the YouTube waves, there's some pretty entertaining chirps. 100%. I can imagine what it'd be like to be sitting there and hearing them firsthand.
And you're trying to announce a goal or a penalty or whatever, and you hear this going on. You can't not help but hear it. The guy's literally 3 feet away from you,
yelling it in your ear.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Hey, Dark Guy, what's going on with the microphone? Like, what is happening?
Right here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's not plugged in. It's got to be plugged in. What's going on here?
It's right here.
He hasn't figured out how to.
It's all
MacGyver.
easy to do. You just follow the instructions, don't you?
Next week,
so
he'll be
I had
plugged
a
in.
friend send it over to me to do me a favor because they didn't like listening to me with no mic anymore.
Yeah.
And I spent a good half hour or 40 minutes tonight trying to Jeremy Riggett MacGyver it up because I'm not sitting at a regular desk. I'm at an air hockey table.
You know where I am?
To really clamp it on nice and easy.
Nice.
So when the show is over, I'll have to figure it out and it'll be ready to go for next week.
All right, fine. That's good. I'm sitting at a ping pong table, so there you go.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
you know
He's
what?
at the ping pong table.
I don't know what's worse is having a mic not set up or having a mic and not knowing how to work it.
Well, I know how to work it. It's just when you're sitting here and you're like, let's explain to the viewers and listeners how this happens. So I click on the link you send, and then it comes up saying, the producer of the show will let you in when he wants to. And you just sort of sit there and you wait and you can't test anything. So I'm like, well, I hope it works when it starts. And sure enough, boom, it came on. And it was like, yeah, it's not set up properly. So
Yeah, I know. It's just a weird thing not to dive into like microphone geek world for the viewers that definitely don't care. But sometimes certain microphones, when you plug them in, just the software, that the driver, they call it.
yeah.
Some programs, when you open them up fresh, like Zoom, for instance, sometimes will change
Default.
down back to default settings and
Yep.
not recognize your external microphone that you've plugged in. So yeah, it's just one of those little techie things. It is what it is. Speaking of that, Arky, now moving on, obviously I mentioned that you worked for quite a while with the legendary Bob McCown. We actually had him on MWO Sports earlier this year. That feels like it was 3 years ago now. But he was fantastic. And Bob, I got to say this from, it's the first and only time I've ever talked to him. You guys obviously have a great relationship. And we thought, Bob will come on the show for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He ended up eating up the entire hour of the show, and we had to do a bonus episode with our second guest because he just talked and told so many great stories. What was it like working with that guy? I know you guys definitely butted heads from time to time.
I think everyone who's worked with Bob McCown has butted heads with Bob McCown.
Right.
It's not hard to do. He's a strong-willed guy, and he's got his opinions on how the show should be run. And here's his biggest thing: if a guest says they're going to show up at 7:30, then the guest better show up at 7:30. And like, honestly, guys, you've listened to Bob McCown. He can fill. He can talk.
Oh,
But
yeah.
he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to do what is on his schedule. So that was the biggest things, is when he didn't get the guest at the time we were supposed to get the guest. And he would then say to me, "You're never going to wait for a guest to call in again. You always have to call the guest." And I said, okay, so now we're going to cut down about 60, 70% of the guests will actually show up because, quite frankly, a lot of them want to give out their phone numbers back then. It's a lot different now, guys. It's a lot different. Like a guy, you can give out your phone number, and then as soon as you call it once, they block your number, whatever they want to do. Like, it's easy, right? Like, phone numbers aren't as sacred as they used to be, I don't think. And you can talk to people a lot easier on social media, reach out to them, say, hey, can you come on our show? But that was the one thing with Bob. He didn't like when things didn't go as planned. So there was that back and forth whenever that happened. Sure, it happened once every 2 or 3 weeks where a guest just wouldn't show up, wouldn't call in, or would call in late. And so, we butt heads? Sure. Did I have fun working with him? Sure. Did I get discouraged at times and not want to ever work with him again? Absolutely. But I stuck it out for, I think, the longest any producer ever stuck with him, 8 years, I think it was, that we worked together. So I started working with him actually on Talking of Sports. He did a show called Talking of Sports with Bill Waters, 7 to 9 o'clock on CJCL radio. They were still music at that time. This was like 1988, 89. And we had regular callers. There was a guy, Jack, Montreal Jack, we would call him, and just like regular callers onto the show. During probably before you were even born, but it was fun. It was my introduction to talk radio, and no one else did a sports show like that in Canada, I don't think, at the time. And that really vaulted into primetime sports starting. Primetime sports started in 1989, 3 years before the Fan started. The Fan didn't start till 1992. But primetime sports, 6 to 7, it was just a 1 hour show I remember like I was the full-time producer of that show. Howard Berger was the first producer of the show, but then he went on to the Leaf Beat, covering the Leafs, and they made me the producer of the show. And it was like 1 hour of radio. Like I can't imagine a full-time job now producing 1 hour of radio, but at that time it was. And you know how we got our stories? We would read the newspaper. Like there was no social media. There was no way to get stories. We didn't have people breaking stories. So we would read the newspaper and find interesting stories and then do an extension of that.
I can tell you, Bobcat broke my heart a little bit. I always respected him. Didn't always agree with some of his opinions, but I loved listening to him. And
how did he break your heart? How did he break your heart?
And I heard some comments, or sorry, I guess you could say read some comments that Mr. McCowan made in regards to Dark Eye. And I don't remember exactly what he said word for word, but let's just say he wasn't a fan of the whole scenario.
Hey, you didn't make yourself. People made you for you. Social media made you. And you took advantage of it.
Out of all the people that I wasn't expecting. Well, I can't say I wasn't expecting it. I pretty much probably expected it from Bob, but I was hoping he wouldn't have been the one to say what he said, and he broke my heart. But I'm over it now.
Yeah, Bob, come on the show. You know,
we should. I should dig up what exactly he said and call him out on it.
Good luck. Yeah, it might be a fun show. He does his own podcast now, apparently. So
he does. Yeah, he usually has John Shannon on there with him. Yeah. Who we've also chatted with.
Clarky,
now, tell us a bit about that as well. Sorry, Dark Eye. Just tell us a bit about that as well, because obviously you spent all that time with Bob, his longest tenured producer. I mean, it's a great gig. You got to work, for your favorite sports franchise. It's something that not a lot of us get to do, and you got to do some pretty cool stuff at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and a lot of that was with one Mr. John Shannon.
Well, John was in charge, and it all started in my office at the Fan one day. John came in to do the roundtable, and he was sitting in my office, and over the fax machine, back in probably 99 or 2000, a fax came in announcing that the Leafs and the Raptors were getting their own TV networks. And I printed it off, and I just sort of shot it to him as he was sitting in the chair. And I go, "Are you going to go run that place?" And he goes, "I don't know. If I go, will you come with me?" I go, "Yep." And that's where it started. And then as things progressed, and I think it was about a year and a half or so after they announced it that they actually launched. I had a meeting with John at a pub in Clarkson, maybe called the Clarkson Pub. I can't remember. But anyway, we had a meeting there because I knew him, and it wasn't like I didn't have to go through any formal interview process or anything for the job, but he named me the senior or live producer for Leafs TV, and which was interesting because I'd never produced TV before, and it was quite the learning curve, but I had a great cast around me. And really leaned on those kind of people to help me through it. Looking at, John Shannon, who was one of the best executive producers hockey in Canada probably has ever had, and learning from him. And you know what? Talk about working with Bob McCowan and having some tough times. It wasn't easy with John either. He was a very demanding guy, but I learned a lot. And at the end of the day, I came away from it knowing how to produce TV. And then after that, worked my way into the online side. But yeah, had a lot of great things that we did at Leafs TV. I think there's something, hold on one second. Hold on. Don't go away.
He's got all sorts of great stuff laying around here. What have we got here?
So this was one of my favorite things that I did at Leafs TV. I did play-by-play for kids games. So that's me and Sammy Cosentino there. Sam was my color commentator on the games, but Jennifer Millard, Darren's wife, was the on-bench reporter and the host of the show. And Chris Zelkovich from the Toronto Star did a big story on it, and I have this big printout of it. So it's kind of a neat keepsake from that. But that was probably, I always wanted to do play-by-play. That's why I got into the business. But there was a guy named Joe Bowen in front of me, and I never thought that I would get the opportunity. I remember when we hired John Bartlett to do the Marley games, and I was like, "Why didn't you ask me? I've been doing Saturday's Heroes for the last couple of years." But John said I couldn't afford the pay cut, so that's why John Bartlett got it. But John's doing well now. So, but yeah, like just things like that. So we brought kids down to the Air Canada Center, mostly house league teams, because we wanted to give the opportunity to kids teams with kids that really didn't have an opportunity to do neat things. You know, they didn't travel. They just played at their local rinks. They weren't a rep team. So we would bring them down anywhere from, like, I would say 6 to 14 years of age. And they played a game at the Air Canada Center, and we did the national anthem before the game. We did interviews on the bench. We had Leafs TV pucks. Whenever someone scored a goal, they got to keep the puck. We had a referee who was mic'd up. It was just a fun time. They would announce. We had an announcer. It was actually Josh Rimmer. Josh is the son of Jeff Rimmer, the voice of the Columbus Blue Jackets. So Josh was the
That's right.
PA announcer down there, and it was a lot of fun. It was by far my most favorite thing to do when I was working with the Leafs, for sure.
Well, like Ryan said, you know, you live the dream to be able to work for the franchise that you love, and hopefully one day I'll be able to follow in those footsteps in one way or another. But some people are going to thank you for this next tidbit of information, and some people are going to not be happy with you. But you gave a mutual friend of ours his start in the business. Perhaps one of the most recognizable Leaf fans out there, Steve Dangle.
Yeah.
Great guy, amazing guy, newborn kid. He's going to be an upcoming guest on one of our shows, but for all intents and purposes, from my discussions with Steve, he's telling me that you were the gentleman that gave him his start in the business. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be, maybe what Steve was like in the early years when you first met him?
Well, it's funny how he says that now, but when he writes his book, he just rips me for yelling at him when he lost a computer. No, I'm kidding. So Dangle, here's the deal with Steve Dangle. I got to know him when I was producing Junior Hockey Magazine with Gino Retta. It's a show that they're claiming it's 30 years old, but I actually texted Gino yesterday because I heard the show and they're saying it's 30 years old. I'm like, the fan isn't even 30 years old, and it wasn't on the fan before the fan. So how is it 30 years old? Anyway, so Steve Dangle was like a producer on the show, a writer, we called him. He was the writer for the show. And this is when I had transitioned into the online side at Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. And we had started a thing called Leaf Space after MySpace. That was big back then. So we were looking for someone who could be our fan, marquee fan in that space. And one day he told me he did these blogs, these video blogs. And it was like probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 months after I met him, because he didn't really tell a lot of people. He just had this following. And I go, well, send it to me. Let me see it. So he sent it to me, and I'm like, okay, it's pretty good, right? He spent a lot of time on them. You could tell they were edited beautifully, and he was passionate about the Maple Leafs, and that's exactly what we were looking for. And I told my boss, John McCauley at the time, and said we should think about hiring this guy as our marquee guy on Leaf Space. And I don't remember all the details, Derek Guy, of how it happened and how, but he tells the story that I called him and said, hey, I want to meet you. We're going to make you a star. And maybe I regret those words. No, I can't. But no, you know what? He's done great. Like, there's no question about it. He's done great. When the book came out, Drury knows that I had a couple of issues with the book, just a couple of private conversations that I would have in my office with someone. You would hope those kind of things never came out in a book, but at the end of the day, they weren't anything major. But good guy, I totally agree. Humble guy, like really in person, like he's a really good guy to know. But when he's talented, he's very talented. I loved when he had Hat Guy. You remember Hat Guy, like his alter ego sort of thing, things like that. But Dark Guy, you know what, you put that paint on, like your beard's got a little out of control. I can see it's a little longer when you were the original Dark Guy, and being on TV. The beard is a lot longer than it was then. But
yeah,
you know what? You just stick around the right people, and you'll be writing a book one day. I guarantee it.
I've had a couple of suggestions to that, and I probably wouldn't mind doing so. But the way I see it, I'm not done writing my book yet. the day I have a business card that says professional scout for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'll start writing a book.
There you go. Well, have you tried to get in touch with them?
I've been in touch with Reed Mitchell.
Yep.
Speak to him on a regular basis now. I've actually sent him a few scouting reports.
He's a great guy.
He is a great guy, and truth be told, I met him out in Vancouver after a Leafs overtime loss to the Canucks, and I didn't want to go bug him. They were he was out. I guess the easiest way to say it, drowning his sorrows.
At Earl's,
I looked over and I'm like, that's Reed Mitchell. He's the director of scouting for the Maple Leafs, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I do not want to be the guy that goes up and bugs him in the middle of an after hours establishment or a bar, sorry. And I'm like, I can't do this. And then I started thinking, you know what? When am I going to be in the same vicinity of him again? So I went up and I introduced myself to him, and I'll tell you, he was so polite, welcoming, took all the time in the world to talk to me. Can't say enough great things about him. So he handed me his business card that night, and I've taken every advantage of having that information as far as sending him scouting reports and talking hockey. And one day, hopefully soon.
So a couple things about Reed. I know Reed really well. He worked for the Canucks before the Maple Leafs. He's from out there. And I bet it was Earl's probably that you guys were at. I'm just guessing, but he loved Earl's downtown Vancouver. But he was the guy who, when Brian Burke came to the Leafs, he started the afternoon shinny. So that's what we called it, afternoon shinny. On a game day, we would play shinny at Air Canada Centre at 1:00 with the front office staff, with some of the assistant coaches, some of the alumni, and they needed a goalie. And Reed asked me to play, and it was like unbelievably good hockey, way too good for me, but like I would meet so many people that way. That's how me and Dave Poulin became really good friends, and just being on the ice with Pooley, and he's always trying to shoot 5-hole, and I didn't care if he scored anywhere else on me as long as it wasn't on the 5-hole. But Reed was the organizer. Reed was the guy all the time, the guy who would do all the organizing. He puts in so many hours with Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. It is crazy. And you're right. Like at draft time, he's the guy. He's in charge of all the paperwork for the scouts and all the things you have to organize. He does it all, and he does it without complaining. And he's just a super, super guy.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I think eventually, you have a goal in mind and you can achieve that. And Dark, obviously you're talking to the right people. And I mean, that's kind of why, I've kind of stuck around Clarkie's right side for the last few years. And I mean, we've started a show together, obviously, that's doing well. And
it's not for his good looks, that's for sure.
Well, come on now. He's a pretty good-looking guy for being 52, 53
Sure.
maybe. Yeah, we'll call it that.
Yeah,
he's more, it's about 50.
Sure. Thanks.
So now, obviously, you were with the Leafs. Like early in your time at MLSE, the Leafs were still really competitive. Like they were really good. They went to a conference final one
first year, 2001, the first year they played Carolina. Yeah.
They lost to Jeff O'Neill and the Carolina Hurricanes, which I mean was I think that if I'm not mistaken, they had a lot of injuries. Like I don't think Sundin played that entire conference final. Gary Roberts missed the first half of it, and I think Darcy Tucker maybe only played a game. But even still, whether they would have beat that great Red Wings team, who knows? Who knows, right? Because Cujo was standing on his head still. So that early tenure was like very successful. Pat Quinn and God rest Pat Quinn. It's 6 years today that we lost Pat Quinn, and he was just such a giant in the hockey world, but particularly for Leaf fans and fans of Team Canada, of course, all the great things that Pat Quinn did. And we miss him for sure, but like wildly successful. I mean, aside from going to a cup final or winning the ultimate prize, they were very competitive. They've beaten the Ottawa Senators all the time and had some great battles with the Islanders and the Flyers. I remember Darcy Tucker fighting Jeremy Roenick and the knee on Mike Pekka. It was just a great time to be a Leaf fan. And then, they slowly started, approaching post lockout where we lost the full season. It started to go off the rails a little bit. What was that like for you to kind of work for the team during, one of their down periods in their history, we'll call it?
Well, during the lockout, like it was kind of scary because we didn't know if we were going to lose our jobs. Quite frankly, that was more important to me at the time than any hockey. It was like my job, right? Like what's going to happen? And they did say at one point, okay, if we make it to such and such date, everyone's got to take a pay cut. Like, okay, well, at least we'll still have a job. We were still doing shows, guys. We were still doing our Leafs Today show every day. And it was like, like we're now 2.5 months in. What are we going to talk about today about the Leafs and the lockout? So that's where you really earn your keep, when it comes to producing. But it was definitely a downtime. There's no question about it. And I hate to say it, guys. I really hate to say it. But when I worked for the team, I sort of lost the fan in me. I really did, because it was more of a job at that point, and it was a grind every day. Like I would be in 9 a.m. in the morning and not leave till 1 in the morning, because I would produce a morning show, and then I would produce the pregame show, and then I would produce the postgame show, which was 2 hours. We had Andy Frost as part of our postgame show taking calls. I wouldn't get out of there till midnight, 1 in the morning. And then if it was back to back, I had to be back in at 7:30 in the morning. So 4 hours of sleep. So it's a grind. It's not always rosy. That's for sure. But at that point, I was still a fan of the team, but I tell you what, when they get eliminated from the playoffs and your summer's here and that your workload is dropped off a cliff, it's hard not to think, relief. And I hated it. I honestly hated it.
You were happy the Leafs were out.
Right? And can you imagine that as a Leaf fan? Like, can you imagine thinking that? Like, I'm like 40 years old or whatever I was at the time, and I've been a Leaf fan all my life, and now I'm like, oh, okay. It was just a little different because I wasn't right involved with the team. Like, you could tell the guys involved with the team were so into it and were very disappointed when it was over. And it's not that I wasn't. I still had that fan in the back of my head, and I was like, dang it. But at the end of the day, you're right. It was things got a lot calmer for me. The first 2 years they made it to the conference final, and I had to work into May. And then it was different when they sucked, and the guys weren't as good to talk to. It's a lot easier when you're winning. Like, guys are easier to get along with, talk to, but come playoff time, boy, then a lot of cameras in the dressing room and you're fighting for position. And we had an in, like we were always situated, especially for our post-game show. We used to get in the dressing room before the game was over, set up our camera over by the video room, and we would get one-on-one guests coming to us like throughout the show. Andy Petrillo was down there. Andy was great. Bob Harwood was down there, and then Paul Hendrick. So all that was really well run. But yeah, it was a lot easier when they were winning, for sure, to talk to them.
Clarky, you said earlier that, when you got into the sport media biz, you kind of wanted to be a play-by-play, a color commentator. You're saying 52 years old. You're still fairly young. Do you have any desires to maybe try and chase down that dream still?
There's just so many young guys now, Dark Guy, to do that job. We're sitting with one guy right now who's really good. He's probably never really heard me do play-by-play.
That's not true.
I was the voice of the Humber Hawks when I went to college. We did the Humber Hawks play-by-play. I was named the sports director my second year of college, and they wanted me to introduce local sports to the college. So I said, okay, we're going to start doing the play-by-play for the Humber Hawks hockey team, and I'm doing the play-by-play. So that was an easy assignment for me, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. We went to Quebec City for the Nationals that year. But then as things progressed and I got into the production side and the producing side, I think it's hard when you don't do something for so long to jump right back in. Now I've been talking to our friend Josh Keel about maybe helping out with the Mitchell Hawks this year. Doesn't look like there's going to be a this year, so I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
It was funny when I said to Drury, maybe you can help me do it. He goes, yeah, I can do play-by-play for that. I said, no. First of all, he asked me to do it, and I'm doing the play-by-play. I'm jumping back in. So
I can be your color, man. Come on.
You would be the color guy for sure, and then we'll get guest color commentating from Dart Guy every once in a while. That'd be great.
Yeah,
that'd be great. You got to come visit us, man.
Well, yeah, now that I'm up in Barrie, I'm not as close as the hop, skip, and jump as I used to be from you guys. But
yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, I do have dreams still. Absolutely. I don't think I'll ever get there now. I have other dreams. I still would love to run a sports radio station one day. That is my ultimate goal. We'll see. Who knows? You never know if jobs come available. The couple of good people working at the Toronto sports radio stations right now, but I keep my ear to the grindstone and really keep on top of what's happening there. And if a position ever opened up in sports radio, that's the ultimate goal of mine is to is to run a sports radio station. So we'll see.
Well, and you're the guy that a lot of people would probably turn to. I mean, like we've said, you've got a lot of contacts in the business and you've been doing so many different things for so long. And I mean, right off the hop, I mean, you work for the Maple Leafs for any length of time. I mean, that's going to look pretty shiny on a resume. And I have heard you do play-by-play, man. And you've done color with me a couple times as well on our broadcasts at CKNX, and you did a great job. And you know what?
The funny thing is, Ryan, is I find color harder. And the reason I
find
color, because I think with color commentating, you really have to know the teams. You have to know their tendencies. You have to know the history. To me, when you're doing play-by-play, you're following the ice. You're following what's going on.
It's all about the action.
Puck, that guy has the puck.
Yeah.
But when you're a color commentator, you really have to do your homework and you really have to know the game and all that stuff. So I find it a lot harder to do color commentating, and I get more anxious before I have to do a color commentating job than I do play-by-play. I did some play-by-play too for Rogers TV, the Brampton Battalion, and I remember stepping in there and I called this guy Steph Lejeune for the whole game, and no one corrected me. So like it's Stefan Legion, right? Like I called him Lejeune because I hadn't done games and I didn't know his name, and no one corrected me. And that's the one thing I've told Ryan when we do our show. Call each other out. Don't be afraid to call each other out when they make a little mistake or whatever. Like,
for sure.
But the producer should have been in my ear. Like if that was me producing the game and I'm hearing my play-by-play guy calling him Steph Lejeune, well, I'm thinking one of two things. Either did I not know his name or is this guy screwing up? And I would just go, hey, is it Lejeune or Legion? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Is it Legion? And then everyone would have said, yes, Legion. Oh, okay, I'll change it. You got to help a guy out. You got to bail a guy out. So many times, like when Bob McCowan, getting back to Bob did his show in Las Vegas, guys. He did his show from his kitchen in Las Vegas for 2 years. And I had to every day, there was no internet then. None. Zero. No internet. I would have to photocopy the newspaper and fax him all the stories in the newspaper.
Oh, my God.
We did open phones. Like we would have callers call in, and they would talk about the Leaf game last night. And Bob has no clue. Bob has not watched the Leaf game. He has no clue. So what was happening is when the guy was asking him questions about Ty Domi's fight last night, do you think this? I was piping in his ear exactly what happened, and Bob was just repeating what I was saying.
That's hilarious.
That's how you bail out a guy. That's how a producer can bail out an announcer, because I could tell Bob has no clue. There's no way he has any idea what's going on. So you got to bail him out.
Don't want to elaborate, maybe you do, but why was he doing his show from Vegas?
So here's the answer. Because he could. He made a deal with this radio station. His deal was up, and he's like, I don't like the winters. I'm going to go to Vegas, and I'm going to do the show in Vegas in the winter. And the radio station said, okay, Bob, and how much do you want to get paid for that?
Wow.
Because he just wrote his own ticket. He was the king. He was the guy. And
that's true.
He had a house in Vegas. He had lived there before. So he just moved back into his house. I visited him down there. I spent a week down there in Vegas with him. It was quite the time. I'll tell you that much. We went to Red Rock Canyon one day. He said, I got to show you the sights. We get to Red Rock Canyon. And they had just introduced parking fees at Red Rock Canyon of $3. And we get there after driving an hour and 40 minutes. And he's like, You got to pay to park here now? Forget it. We're going to turn around. I'm like, Bob, like, it's a $3. Like, let me just give you the $3, right? It's like, that's the kind of guy Bob was. Like, if
The
something
man of
ticked him off, he
principle.
just want, yeah. And I'm like, I've never been here. Just park the car for $3, please.
I
Just
will
park
drive-
the car.
I will drive 18 hours back the other way.
Yeah.
To save $3.
Incredible.
But that was Bob.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and I mean, just an all-time great host. And like, you know, you've told me stories before too of, you know, my familiarity with Bob was him being on Sports Fan 590, and I believe his show was 4 to 6 or 4 to 7.
4 to 7, yeah.
4 to 7, and we would watch him every day after school, and or if Dad and I were on the road somewhere, we would listen to him on the radio. Dad loved Bob, and you've told me famously that he would walk in like with seconds to spare before the show started.
Guys, like, sometimes not even seconds to spare. The music was playing, and like, I remember we did the show
It's
with Jim Hunt.
401, like
404, 405. Scott Ferguson hasn't stopped the doing the sports update at this point, and Bob Bob's nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. And Jim Hunt was there, and I remember a couple times Jim had to do the guy named Shaky, Jim Hunt, famous Toronto Sun writer who was Bob's co-host for years. So Bob did his own show from 4 to 5, and then we always had a co-host from 5 to 7. So yeah, sometimes at 4 o'clock we would have to hit the music like 3 times, and it's like 3 minutes worth of right, the primetime sports music. No sign of Bob. He must be somewhere. He's stuck in the elevator or whatever. And he would just come in and he goes, "Hey guys, sorry, I was just finishing my cigarette." And I just, like, no problem. Sits down in the chair. But then at 5 o'clock, if Bob was there, because he would go downstairs to have a smoke between the hours, right, when the sports updates were on. So he went down to have a dart, and sometimes he didn't make it on time, and Jim would have to start the show. And it was quite interesting. So, and that reminds me of another thing. April Fool's once, we made an arrangement with Joe Bowen and Bill Waters that Joe was going to not come back for the beginning of the period, the second period of the game, and Bill was going to have to do the play-by-play. And it was all set up, and Bill didn't know, and Bill's like, "Where's Joe?" And I said, "I don't know. You're going to have to pick this up, man, because the puck's about to drop." So sure enough, I go, "Your mic's hot. Go do the play-by-play." It was the worst thing ever. And then Joe would just come in killing himself laughing. We had
that's
some fun.
Fantastic. Oh
yeah,
God.
we had some fun for sure.
Well, I feel bad all these times that when Ryan and I had our gig there on TSN, we would carpool together, and I'd make Ryan. We'd be at the studio like 45 minutes before the show started. We'd be like,
"Oh yeah,
that's what time we're getting there."
Yeah, no, and you know what? When I produced with Schulman, prime time, Dan was there at like noon. He was there 4 hours before the show because he was a professionalist and he wanted to prepare properly, and he was there really early. And you know what? It's one of those things where, as a producer, you like to be in charge of the show and have your focus. And I kind of liked working with Bob because Bob just left me alone, right? Like, he would walk in at whenever 4 o'clock, and I would give him the lineup for the day. He would do his open phones at 4:30. We would take a break. I would go in and explain the next 2 hours because the first hour is always open phones, always.
Yeah.
So then I would go in and I would start talking to him about the show and what's coming up on the show. And he usually would only want like 2 guests information at the time. So whatever guests we had at like 5:15 and 5:30 or whatever the case may be, he didn't like to know too much at a time. But with Dan was like constantly, and Dan, don't get me wrong, it was awesome working for Dan, but it was different because now Dan is standing behind me for 4 hours, not literally, but hey, who do we have? Maybe we should try this guy. Maybe we should try that guy. With Bob, I was the guy, right? And there was no questioning me of what direction we're going to go for during the show. But Dan liked having his fingers in it, which was great because it helped me at the end of the day. It helped if I was stumped and it was like, man, I don't know who we're going to get for the 4th guest tonight. Dan would always have some great suggestions and we would start calling them. So yeah, but definitely different, both guys.
For sure. And you know, we've had the pleasure of talking to Dan on our show as well, Clark. Anybody that listens to Dan knows he's an extremely meticulous guy.
Yeah.
And you know, that's Bob had his way, and it's certainly not the way, like Dark Guy said, like, you know, when I did a couple guest gigs with Dark Guy. I just thought, oh, I'll make 1 or 2 appearances here, but I get to go to TSN, like, cool, right? And I'm like, I got to show up an hour plus early, right? And we get there no more than 40 minutes to showtime and sit there and like go over notes. It just like, I did not want to walk in 15 minutes before the show and, you know, be scrambling. But
do you guys have another guest today, or am I it?
No, you were it.
Because like on the description on YouTube, it said Rob Schremp's going to be the guest. So like, I don't know.
Oh, they might have confused that with one of the other shows that I'm on.
That was Off the Puck. Off the Puck is having Rob Schremp.
Because on the YouTube, I was watching you guys from 7 to 7:30, and it said Rob Schremp's going to be on the show. So
what a beauty! He's watching us before he comes on. I love it.
You know what? I want to know what you're talking about. I want to figure it out.
Here.
And I'm with you, Dark Guy. Where's Corey Perry? Like, why hasn't this guy signed? Like, Corey Perry is my favorite non-Maple Leaf. Has been for a long, long time. Will the Leafs sign him? Probably not. Would I want them to? Yeah. Is he going to go to Ottawa? That's the rumor. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was the rumor.
Like if you were listening, it's like I said, I understand there's concerns, financial concerns from owners, but you have some pretty decent players that could help your team, and a lot of teams that need defensive help. A lot of teams that need a puck moving defenseman. A lot of teams that could use some secondary goal scoring, and you've got a guy like Hoffman sitting there. You got a guy like Vatanen sitting there.
Where's Chara end up? Chara hasn't signed, right?
I don't think Chara signs anywhere but Boston.
Yeah. I saw DeBrusk signed in Boston today, 2 years. So
decent deal for DeBrusk.
The change of gears. So this is one thing I kind of wanted to talk about with Ryan today, and since you seem to enjoy staying here with us, I'm going to ask you, Clarky. The last couple of years, the NHL has, I guess, taken some heat from the media about a lack of fireworks in the off season. The other day, there was a story put out by I can't remember who it was, Josh Wegman, I think, works for The Score, suggesting that the NHL really needs to spice up their offseason, and that they should point to the NBA as a prime example of what the NHL should model their offseason at. Now, obviously, that's nowhere near coming to fruition. They just signed an extension, so it wouldn't come until the next CBA contract negotiations. But what would you make of a kind of like a wild west sort of scenario that the NBA has in the NHL for the offseason?
I'm not the biggest NBA fan, so I don't exactly know. Like the NHL has a great June and middle, and then up to the first week of July, basically, with the draft. The Stanley Cup gets awarded in early June. Let's talk about a normal season. You have the draft usually around the June 24th mark. Then you have July 1st free agency. I don't mind a little downtime after that. Like, people need to recoup. People need to take breaks. People need to just unwind after a long season, and that's when you usually see like Bob McKenzie's of the worlds and all those type of guys taking a couple of months off. I don't know. I don't mind it. I think it's an American thing that they just think it needs to be souped up a little bit. I'm fine with the way it is now. Is that what you mean? Like, is it just the?
Well, here's the thing, right, Clarky and Dark Guy. Here's the difference, right? Is that I don't think that it's just ever going to be able to be possible, really, unless we hit some sort of magical year where a bunch of 28-year-olds are free agents at the same time, and a bunch of them pull a John Tavares and are considering leaving a franchise that they haven't had much success with. Other than that, and that just doesn't happen that much in the NHL, because even though they've shortened contract limits and whatever, because if they hadn't, you would see guys sign 10, 12-year deals like what Ovechkin did back in the day. So the other thing, too, is it can't happen to that degree with the salary cap. The NBA has a luxury tax.
Yeah, and that's what the league, that I would love a luxury tax, wouldn't we, Dark Guy? That's
absolutely. Either a rolling cap or a soft cap.
Yeah, it's never going to happen with Gary.
Spend, as a lower market team, whatever you don't spend up to the cap this year, you can bank that for a few years and use that when the time is right, or you pay the luxury tax, which I'd be fine with too.
The Leafs would go over all the time. The Leafs would go over. They wouldn't care. They print money.
What they were talking about was, using a rolling cap or a soft cap. But then they started talking about using like player opt-outs in the last 2 years of your contract. And they pointed to James Harden. I think it just was turned down a $50 million offer from Houston because he wants to go to New York.
Yeah.
And they were trying to encourage like superstars to move in their prime. And for me, that's part of the thing that, I like about hockey is there's loyalty to the team that drafted you, that gave you their chance. I don't want to see Connor McDavid play on 5 different teams in 7 years.
No.
I don't want to see Crosby play on 6 different teams. Like,
yeah, you know what?
I don't like it the way it is.
I do too. And I think a lot of American sports writers and stuff want to make it like the NBA or the NFL. Like I was thinking today, I was listening to sports radio today. I was just taking a drive and they were talking about the Vegas Raiders. And I'm thinking, like, can you imagine if the Maple Leafs were like the Raiders? Oakland, LA, Oakland, Vegas, LA, like it's just not cool. And it's like, as much as we all can sit here and say, Gary Bettman this and Gary Bettman that, the owners really tried, and Bettman really tries to keep teams in their towns unless there's no owner available. And he doesn't like owners just like holding the city's ransom that they're in to get new building deals. It just doesn't happen in hockey like it does in football. Where are the Cardinals now? Where are the Rams now? Where are the Baltimore Colts, Indianapolis, like it just happens so much in those sports. I'm glad that hasn't happened to hockey. Sure, we can all sit here and probably say Phoenix should not have a team. Well, Phoenix has a team if there's an owner there who wants to pay the bills. And if the league has to take it over, then they can't take it over for long in my mind. Should they be in Quebec? Maybe. Should they be another team in Toronto? Absolutely, there should be another team in Toronto. And you know what? When Bell and Rogers bought the Maple Leafs, I always thought it was a short-term thing because they're in charge now of the territory. And wouldn't they both love another team in the biggest market in Canada? I would think so. We always thought when I worked for the team that when that happened in like 5-10 years, Bell would own one team and Rogers would own another team. They would split it off and someone would own the Leafs and someone would own a new team in the area. I still think it's going to happen one day. I really think another team is going to come to Toronto one day. It's just there's too much money here not to. There's too much money in this area to support a team. Like you look at 3 teams in California, 3 teams within 25 miles in New York. Mm-hmm. The biggest hockey market in North America is Toronto. There needs to be another team in Toronto. Is it going to be a team?
What would you think, Clarky? Do you back when they were talking about? Oh my God, why can't I not remember his name now?
Balsillie?
Yeah, Balsillie bringing the Predators to Hamilton.
Yeah.
For myself, I did not see that as a feasible option. I thought perhaps maybe Markham would be more well suited, Mississauga, something like that. Where do you think if there were to be a team?
Yeah.
Somebody calls you tomorrow and says, Clarky, I've got $800 million for you to put a team in Toronto. Where are you putting it?
Well, my first question is, where do the Clippers play?
The LA Clippers?
LA.
Yeah, where do they play?
So they share Staples Center with the
they
Lakers.
share Staples Center.
Would you want that though? Like, because the Raptors are already in there. I don't know.
What do you mean? Would I want it? What's the deal? What's the big deal? Like, it's just, like they can turn that thing around in half a day. You could play a Raptor game in the afternoon and a Leaf game at night. You really could.
It makes the ice suck, and then to double that and have the ice suck worse. And then the other thing too is that Scotiabank, and I'm sure the people who own the building. I don't know who owns the building. If it's the Leafs, I'm sure the Leafs
own the building. It's their building.
So they own it. So I think that having another team there would also probably conflict with concert dates and stuff like that. So I don't know how they would. So they need their own building.
You're right. Do they need their own building? Probably at the end of the day.
They could make it work.
They could make it work.
What you're saying.
You're right. The concert thing is a major part of their business. No question about it. Markham, Dark Guy, getting back to that question, somewhere close in the GTA. Hamilton.
Markham has the rink.
Cops is not an option.
No.
Hamilton's not an option.
No.
Markham is the answer, or anywhere if they want to build another rink somewhere else. That's the answer. And I really think it's coming. I really think we'll see another team in Toronto in our days. And I have less time than you guys probably. Well, not the way Drury runs his life. But I'm kidding.
Come on. That's not true at all. No, I agree. I think it will happen. And yeah, I mean, you look at, 3 teams in California. I mean, the Coyotes are still a thing for some reason. Sorry, Biz. And it's just, I think that it's feasible. And I think that a lot of people would probably get attached to a cheaper option than going to Maple Leaf games, like right off the hop, because the team's not going to be able to charge $1,200 for gold seats. You know,
not off the hop. No, you're right. Not off the hop for sure. It'll be a cheaper option. Absolutely. And they'll attract a lot of fans that way. And there's a lot of fans waiting for that to happen, to jump on that. I don't see Dark Guy. Did I show you this?
Oh my, yeah. I was going to bring your tattoo up and I forgot. I'm glad you reminded me, dude.
You like that? Let me see.
Here we go.
Yes.
Tattoo sharing time.
There we go. We're the Tattoo Brothers.
Here, should I show mine that has a Stanley Cup date on it? Stanley Cup winners?
Well, we don't have room for all 13 of our cups, Ryan. So we're going to wait till they win the next one.
I don't want to.
Okay. Are we going to start this whole thing of how the league? Okay, you have
just stop. They've won 13, so don't just get away.
Oh, and on that note, we can put Ryan to bed with the note that he only has one Stanley Cup. Clarky, thank you so much for your time today. You've been an unbelievable guest, so gracious with your time, your stories. One of these days, you can definitely introduce me to some of those people that might help point me in the direction of MLSE.
I will do that. No question. I will do that. I'm always willing to help, and a good guy like you for sure. And I know all those guys down there. Dave Morrison's the director of professional scouting. He was the head of amateur scouting. I think John Lilly, is it John Lilly who's the director of scouting now? But John is, he's a good guy as well. I know those guys. I spent a lot of time. I used to produce 12 years in a row. I did Behind the Draft with the Leafs and spent time right in their war rooms. And no problem, guys. Thank you very much. I know you had Biz on the first show, Kyprios on the second show. Someone must have canceled for you to call me on the third show.
Oh, come on.
But I appreciate it. I love it. Anytime you want me to talk hockey or whatever, just give me a ring.
1,000,000%, buddy.
You can follow Clarky at sports_Clarky on Twitter. Do you have Instagram, Clarky?
Of course I have Instagram. I don't know what it is.
Looking for it before the show started, know what I couldn't find.
Hold on, just give me 10 seconds. Hold on.
It's probably also sports_Clarky.
You would think, but I tried that.
Right, Clarky.
No, it's not. And maybe I should change. It's Clarky_29, my goalie number.
There you
Clarky
go.
_29 Instagram, sports_Clarky on Twitter. Their show is NWO Sports on CKXN Network. Feel free to give them a follow.
CKNX. Get it right. CKNX. And it's coming to YouTube.
And it's coming to YouTube. That's right.
When's that happening, Clarky?
December 4th.
December 4th.
And we've got a heck of a guest lined up for that, too.
Anyway, thanks, guys.
Cheers, Clarky. Thank you.
I'm going to disconnect my mic now. So
Ryan Drury at CKNX Drury. At Ryan Drury on Instagram. Same thing. Give them a follow. Thank you, Matt, to our fantastic producer for another great show. Thank you to everybody tuning in. And just remember, where there's smoke, there's fire.
There's fire.